I remember growing up playing this game with a bunch of friends when it first came out for free on Xbox Live Gold as the free game of the month. We played it constantly and we loved every single second of it. Whether it was the goofy humor in the game or just throwing each other off the side of a freaking platform, we had so much fun. And even 10 years later, the art style, the songs, the narrator, the character customization, the weird story, it's all still stuck with me. And that's what this video was about, because BattleBlock Theater is just one of those games where you don't just remember playing it, you remember how it felt. And I think that's something a lot of games struggle to achieve. Every single part of this game contributes to its identity. There isn't a single piece that doesn't. The fact that it's a platformer, the fact that it's 2D, the fact that it's a co-op game, it all contributes to its identity. Every layer makes up what this game actually is. I love the hand-drawn art style this game took. The characters and the story behind it is just unbelievably engaging from start to finish, because the entire concept sounds ridiculous when you try to explain it to someone. We're in a prison, but it's also a theater. The prisoners are forced to perform for a bunch of cats, and there's a narrator constantly making fun of you whenever you make a mistake. The whole thing just sounds ridiculous, but it somehow works. And that's because this entire game commits to being weird, and it knows exactly what it wants to be. The soundtrack creates that same goofy mentality. This game isn't taking itself seriously, and it doesn't want you to either, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about: fun. They want you to have fun when you boot it up, and when you get off of it, you're left thinking, man, that was an experience. I can't wait to play this again sometime. Or maybe you never play it again, but years down the road, you'll still think back on it fondly. They also chose an amazing voice actor for this game, I just want to say. The narrator is hilarious from the moment you die all the way through the cutscenes. He makes you feel like you're a part of the joke. You're not just playing through a level. You're experiencing this ridiculous adventure with someone constantly reacting to what you're doing. And that's exactly why I love this game so much. And exactly why so many games feel less memorable to me by comparison. When I say a game has personality, I'm not just talking about graphics here. I'm not talking about how big the world is. I'm not talking about how many features the game has. Personality is when I can look at a screenshot, hear a few seconds of the soundtrack, or see a character design and instantly know what game I'm looking at. BattleBlock Theater has that. You can't mistake it for anything else. And the thing about personality is that it's not something you can just add at the end of development. You can't just make a game and then say, all right, now let's add some personality. It has to be built into everything. The way the character moves, the sound effects, the menus, the writing. It's even in the tiny details that developers could have ignored but decided to include anyway. BattleBlock Theater is full of that. Even something so simple as picking your character feels memorable. You're not just choosing what color you are or what head you're using. You're choosing between a bunch of ridiculous little prisoners with goofy designs. It doesn't change the gameplay, but it makes the world feel more alive. And I think that's something a lot of games underestimate. Not every feature needs to make the game bigger. Sometimes a feature just needs to make the game feel more like itself. And I think that's where a lot of games struggle. There are a lot of incredibly polished games being released today. Games with amazing graphics, huge worlds, and impressive technology. Obviously, all those things are great, but sometimes when everything is focused on being bigger, longer, and more impressive, the smaller things get forgotten. The weird ideas, the strange characters, the moments where you think, why did they even add this? Because those are usually the things people remember. Nobody looks back at a game years later and says, man, I really miss that perfectly optimized inventory system. They remember the ridiculous boss fight. They remember the funny line of dialogue. And they remember playing with friends and laughing at something completely unexpected. Those moments are what make up personality. And I think one of the reasons BattleBlock Theater stands out so much to me is because of who made it. The Behemoth has always had this weird charm to their games. They don't feel like they're trying to compete with every other game on the market. They feel like they were made because someone had a crazy idea and just wanted to see if they could make it work. You look at these games like Castle Crashers and BattleBlock Theater, and they have this handmade feeling. They have a specific sense of humor. They have a specific art style. And they have these things that could easily be considered too weird or too silly to a lot of other developers. But that's exactly what makes them so memorable. A lot of games are made to fit into a category. BattleBlock Theater feels like it was created in its own category. It was just made as like a weird little platform about prisoners putting on a theater shows for these cats in the audiences with a very chaotic narrator that judges your every move. And somehow that's exactly why people still talk about it. And also, I just want to say, personality doesn't mean that a game has to be goofy. That's an important distinction, because a game can be dark, serious, emotional, or even terrifying to have its own personality. It's not about having jokes every 5 seconds. It's about having a clear identity. A game like Silent Hill 2 has personality because of its atmosphere and an emotion it creates whenever you're playing the game. And that game is completely different from BattleBlock Theater. I mean, one's a horror game and the other one's just a goofy platformer. But they have the same thing in common. You can feel the people that crafted this game. That's what makes them memorable. Now, to be fair, personality is not dead. Every once in a while, something comes along and proves that this can still happen. A game like Balatro takes the most stripped down concept of literally just poker and turns it into something so mechanically and visually distinct that you instantly know it from a screenshot. Even take Pal World for an example, right? Pal World is just a new craze recently. I've even been playing it over on my Twitch if you guys want to go follow that. And I've been enjoying my time in that game because even though you just look at it and you're like, man, this is just Pokemon with guns. And I was just like that a few years ago. But now that I'm actually playing this game, I can see that this game has so many different layers to it. You can tell the developers didn't just ship out a slop game for you to play because it was Pokemon with guns. No, Pal World is something completely different. Like, it feels like it just showed up and it knowing exactly what it wanted to be. And these games kind of just prove my point. Like, personality isn't impossible to make anymore. In fact, when a studio fully commits to an idea, people absolutely notice it. And that's why these games stand out. Now, something like BattleBlock Theater, that game is just super nostalgic for me. And it's not nostalgic because it reminds me of being a kid. It's nostalgic because it's kind of earned that feeling. When I look back on this game, I'm not just remembering the fact that I played it once or twice. I'm remembering the little moments that happened while I was playing the game. Playing with friends and laughing about when somebody messed up on a jump or throwing my friend across the entire map for him to drown. Those are the moments that I'm remembering, you know, hearing the narrator roast us after failing, unlocking ridiculous characters. And these memories exist because the game itself gave me something worth remembering. And that's the difference. A game shouldn't be memorable just because of what time you played it in your life. It should be memorable because of what it made you feel when you played it. And I think that's a sign of a game with real personality. It doesn't need to constantly remind you of why it matters. Years later, you just remember why it does. And at the end of the day, personality in a game isn't about chasing whatever's trending. It's all about making something so specific, so weird, so outlandish, and so itself that nobody could ever mistake it for anything else. And I believe BattleBlock Theater did that. And while there are still games being made today that absolutely nail that feeling, I wish more studios were willing to embrace what makes them different instead of chasing what's already working. Because 10 years from now, I probably won't even remember every game I played this year. Hell, I don't even remember anything that I played last year, but somehow I still remember BattleBlock Theater, and I think that says a lot. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I appreciate it. It's been your boy Cactus. Peace out. Love y'all.